Hey everyone, Lewis aka Spider-Man 1991 here with another weekly comic book review. These comics came out July 25th, 2018. As usual, the way I do my reviews is I always do the worst to best comics, so let's get started. Hal Jordan, the Green Lantern Corps, number 49. The Green Lanterns disable the Dark Star's telepathic connection and teleportation. While the Corps fights with the Dark Stars, Hal Jordan has a final showdown with Tomar 2. This issue feels very rushed. It's a great example of this is probably when Hal and Hector Hammond go to take care of the controllers that are hooked up to the Dark Star systems, and Hal says, like, you have to psychic attack the controllers, and Hammond just says, oh, I already did that. Like, in one scene, we don't even see it, it goes by quick. However, there is some really cool artwork in this issue, particularly the last shot where we have Hal Jordan and Tomar 2 about to go at each other, Rocky 3 style. Unfortunately, though, that does not make up for the rushed story of the issue, so at this point, and like I said in past reviews of this series, at this point I'm just getting this comic because the next issue will be the last, and I'm just doing it so that I'll have the complete series. Next up, Moon Knight number 197. Moon Knight goes after a group of sadists who've gathered for a dinner, and the head of the group is Mark's old rabbi, Ernst. I really like the return of the character Ernst from issue 194. I thought that was probably the best issue of this run so far, so I like that coming back. I kind of also, as we were going through the story, I kind of felt like this was going to be a character we already knew, and then I remembered in the little recap at the very beginning of the issue, which they produce in every comics, they mentioned Ernst, and I realized, okay, and I easily put two and two together. This issue does get pretty dark at times, and that's something that Moon Knight is known for, and I think that's great, but at the same time, it's not something that I recommend to everyone. So I would say if you have the opportunity, get Moon Knight. If you don't mind darkness, get Moon Knight number 197. If you don't like your stories too dark, then I say skip it. Detective Comics 985. Batman figures out his connection to the new attacker in Gotham, Karma, and Jefferson Pierce starts to work with Batman's proteges. This issue is very well written. I really enjoyed the beginning of this issue where, in order to help him try to figure out who Karma is, based on one of the clues he gathered, Bruce goes on a joyride in one of his really nice cars just to like get his adrenaline pumping, because he knows that that's a good way to trigger his memory and see it clearly. So I thought that was a brilliant method. Also, I really liked Barbara Gordon's dialogue when she has a conversation with Jefferson Pierce, because the members of the Bat family that Pierce is working with are Barbara Gordon, Cassandra Cain, and Duke Thomas. And that was like the one thing that kind of felt off in this issue, is that their grouping of Barbara with Cassandra and Duke, because I feel like Cassandra and Duke are still kind of like the new kids in the Bat family, and it's odd that they're grouped with Barbara. But then again, Barbara and those two are probably the only Bat vigilantes that are still based in Gotham City, because Nightwing's in Bloodhaven, Red Hood is doing whatever he wants, and Tim Drake, we have no idea where he is. That from a logical standpoint makes sense, but from experience it really doesn't. But the story is still pretty interesting, but it still feels very average. The Sentry number 2. With the Conflictor device stolen, Bob Reynolds tries everything he can to find it. Unfortunately, he gets nabbed by Misty Knight when he fails to check into his screening or whatever, and he gets placed in a prison designed by Tony Stark. Bob decides that the only way he can really try to find the Conflictor is to transform back into the Sentry, which he does. However, when he transforms, he finds out that the Bob Reynolds part of his mind is now stuck in the pocket dimension that was created by the Conflictor. And we also learn that the villain that's currently using the Conflictor and attacking the dimension is Cranio. However, the last page of the issue reveals that the real person behind all of this is actually Billy, Sentry's old sidekick. I really like the way Jeff Lemire wrote the internal conflict that Bob Reynolds is feeling with this series. And he also does a good job sort of illustrating how, even though the Sentry was once like the greatest hero in the Marvel Universe, now he's basically treated like a pariah, and he's finding it very hard to contact the people that could actually help him, like Doctor Strange and Tony Stark. And I think if you like superhero stories that have a lot of internal conflicts, then I would say the Sentry is the story for you. The Terrifics, number 6. The Terrifics manage to reunite and get the orb from Algon, the Element Man. The team uses the orb to cure the town that Algon invaded, and it also turns Metamorpho back into a human Rex Mason. However, the team's victory is short-lived when Mr. Terrific's T-Spheres get hacked by Dr. Dread, who says he's found Tom Strong and is going to kill him. This issue and the previous issue felt like a Silver Age comic, but I mean that in a good way. It's got sort of the craziness and randomness and that little huge over-the-top villain at the end, but surprisingly it works for this group of characters. Also, I really like the way that Dr. Dread's announcement sort of brought focus back to the book's overall arc, which is to find Tom Strong. Oh, and artwork-wise, one of the things that I've loved about this issue and the previous issue is the layout style, because the way they did the layout is whenever each member of the Terrifics is separated or in like a different scene, then it's usually just 2x2, 4 panels, 2x2 on each page. But then if like 2 characters meet up in the same scene, then they sort of merge the panels together. And when they're all together, then it's just basically splash page after splash page, which I think is clever and a really good way to kind of enforce the in-story reason the team has to be together, which is the dark matter connection, that they can't be more than a certain distance away, otherwise, you know, explosion. But yeah, Terrifics, it's still a pretty fun comic, and it's only $2.99, so I think if you have a little extra in your comic book budget, you should definitely give Terrifics a shot. Marvel 2-in-1, number 8. Ben and Johnny have been stuck in Battle World for 2 months. Their powers have completely phased out, but with the help of this world's version of Amadeus Cho, they're able to send an SOS through the multiverse. Unfortunately, their message is picked up by the Mad Thinker's Fantastic Four. I really enjoyed this issue because of its depiction of Ben and Johnny powerless. While Ben, he's pretty much back to a normal human face and he seems adjusted to life without powers, Johnny on the other hand is still struggling. He constantly picks up tea kettles or pots that are still hot and winds up burning his skin a lot. And there's even a scene where Ben runs into Johnny in town and he says like he has to pick up more burn heal, and you see that Johnny's hands are like pretty much covered in bandages. Also, this issue has the moment that we've been waiting for since Ben told Johnny that there was a possibility they'd find Rita Sue, and that is the moment where Johnny learns that Ben lied to him. It's definitely a very emotional moment. However, I think it could have been more powerful if we had seen if the moment had happened right after Ben and Johnny were stranded. And you know, this eventually leads to a huge fight between Ben and Johnny that, due to Johnny's negligence, leads to the house they're currently living in setting on fire. Then Johnny rushes back into the house, and Ben is able to save him because Johnny went back for a picture of the two of them and Sue and Reed with the kids that they kept as a memento, and Johnny went back in order to save it. I thought that was a very powerful scene, especially after the huge fight that they have, because in that moment they start to make up. Marvel 2-in-1 is still doing a good job, I think, building up hype for the Fantastic Four's return, which will be in about 2 weeks from now, so I can't wait for that. We also have this little bonus, we also have another arc that's about to start where they're dealing with the Mad Thinker, who's pretty much taken he's created his own version of the Fantastic Four, so that could be interesting. Marvel 2-in-1, it's a pretty good book, and if you are hyped for the Fantastic Four, I recommend you check this series out first. Flash, number 51. The Flash family deals with the fallout of Flash War. Barry helps Commander Cole move into his apartment. Wally keeps running all around the world until trying to figure out a way to travel through time in order to save his children. And the second Wally decides to run away from home. Ultimately, though, Wally stops when Wally finally does come to the realization that he can't find his children. He winds up right in front of Barry and Iris, and the two of them are able to comfort him before having Superman and Wonder Woman take him away to Sanctuary, which, if you don't know, it's going to be the setting for the upcoming Heroes in Crisis series, which will take place in a sort of recovery center that Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman built to help recovering superheroes and supervillains. Wally being sent to Sanctuary is, I think, a nice segue to Heroes in Crisis because, well, first off, the series is going to be written by Tom King, so naturally I was intending to pick it up, but I think it's a good way to kind of like give Wally West fans an excuse to pick up this issue. And speaking of Wally West fans, the narration of this issue is done by Iris West as she's like sort of typing a little article or journal entry about Wally and how she basically helped raise him, and then Barry, and how she and Barry were kind of like eventually became like Wally's surrogate parents, which was nice. And there was one line in particular where Iris talked about how much Barry being the Flash meant to Wally, and she's having a line where she says that to an entire generation, Wally was their Flash. And I think that is a good line that will reach a lot of people that read The Flash when Wally West was the only Flash at the time. Joshua Williamson, he does a fantastic job with the relationship between Barry, Wally, and Iris, and I think it's fantastic. I think he did kind of give Wally a good reason to bring him back, but also to write him off, which wasn't disrespectful for anyone, and I think it's going to please a lot of Wally West fans. So I think if you're a Wally West fan, you should definitely pick this up. Action Comics number 1001. Superman and Deputy Fire Chief Melody Moore investigate a little boy's claim that Superman started the fire. They find out that someone actually paid the kid in order to make this false claim. Next, we cut to a group of criminals who are meeting in secret about the fires, and their leader, Mr. Strong, introduces his new enforcer, Red Cloud. Meanwhile, we cut to a hotel in Metropolis where we find Lois Lane starting to write a new story. First off, let me just say, positive note, I do like the way Brian Michael Bendis writes Superman as a character. I really do. I think he's done a terrific job with that so far. Also, Patrick Gleason, he's back on the artwork. If you loved his run on the last Superman title for Rebirth, then I think that's another reason to check this out. We do get a teaser at the very end of this issue, similar to the teaser that we got during the Superman Reborn arc that teased about the other Clark Kent's identity. And in this case, we're getting a teaser about who the Red Cloud is. Personally, I think my top choice in that is the new character Robinson Goode. Also, the way this series sort of picks up on the whole mysterious fire arcs from Man of Steel is a good follow-up to that miniseries if you read all the way through. Also, I like the tone that Bendis is sort of taking with both the Superman titles, where we have the Superman title dealing with all the space stuff, and Action Comics being stories in Metropolis. I think that's a good formula and a nice way to sort of balance, to make a big difference between both Superman titles. However, the only thing that I'm not sure about is just Lois coming back, because some future solicitations have come out that sort of tease the idea that there's going to be big problems in the Lois and Clark relationship. And I think Lois coming back and not telling Clark and being in a hotel room all by herself definitely sends us a message that something bad happened. I do think Lois being back by herself does set up a good mystery, but it could easily go the other way, which might not make a lot of fans happy. But so far, Action Comics 1001, I think it has a great opener. Bendis writes a really good I really like the way Bendis writes Superman, so I say if you're a Superman fan, give it a try. Next up, Amazing Spider-Man number 2. Peter Parker is back in school, and his new teacher is Curt Connors. Connors reveals he now has control of his lizard form. Connors wants Peter to join his class because he knows Peter's potential and love of science, and he shows Peter the isotope genome accelerator that originally turned Peter into Spider-Man. However, their conversation is cut short when Taskmaster and Black Ant break into the lab. Peter uses a chemical explosion to distract everyone so that Spider-Man can show up. However, after the fight, Spider-Man helps up Peter Parker. First off, this issue has a great opener where we see Peter and Mary Jane in bed together, which is just not, and Peter goes on to say like how happy he is, and we see that also in when Peter has to deal with another fight scene when Peter breaks up a robbery, and as Spider-Man he's much more happy, more positive and upbeat, and I think that shows like how much being with Mary Jane puts Peter's life in a more positive direction. And I think that's definitely something that fans have wanted and that fans knew would happen. So, also we get the whole mystery of this next arc coming up, which is the 2 Peter Parkers. There's really not much in this issue that gives us any clue about how this could be possible. And it doesn't really tell us which one is the real Spider-Man or Peter Parker. Hopefully, as this arc progresses, we'll see more evidence that could explain why this is happening. Another positive thing that I do love about this issue is Ryan Ottley's artwork. He's probably one of my favorite comic book artists, so having him draw Spider-Man is definitely a big win for me. Okay, now it's time for my last comic. My pick of the week is Doomsday Clock number 6. This issue reveals the origins of Mime and Marionette, Meanwhile, in the present, Joker and his henchmen take Mime, Marionette, and an incapacitated Batman to a meeting of supervillains. However, this meeting is interrupted by the Comedian. Mime and Marionette manage to escape, but Comedian tracks them down. Unfortunately, so does the Joker. Joker knocks out the Comedian and he intends to work with Mime and Marionette to use the Comedian to find Dr. Manhattan. Alright, so we are halfway through Doomsday Clock, and this issue definitely provides some well-deserved backstory for two of this arc's newer and interesting characters. And I think I really liked having the backstory on Mime and Marionette because we don't really see a lot of the supervillains that exist in the Watchmen universe. I think there may have been only one villain that they've ever given a backstory for. I think his name was MODOK or something. Anyways, there really wasn't much to explain like why the villains did these things other than just, they were bad people they wanted to rob. But this story about Mime and Marionette, it definitely, when we see their origins, it definitely gives them both some real depth, I think, which I find very amazing. And I think that's also to credit of the series writer Jeff Johns, because almost every series that I read by Jeff Johns, he writes really good villains. And I think through Johns' writing, that's kind of where I got the idea that in order to have a good story, you need to have really good solid villains. And I think that's something he excels at, and he's bringing to Doomsday Clock. Also, we find through the backup materials in this issue, we start to learn more about the Department of Metahuman Affairs and how they basically create a supervillain for Firestorm. Okay, so we're halfway through this title, and I gotta say, I'm still loving it. This is one of the best comics that's being published right now that I look forward to every time it's coming out. So if you're not reading Doomsday Clock at this point, we're halfway through. Try to find the issues, catch up, because you do not want to miss this series, especially if you're either a Watchmen fan and or a fan of the DC Rebirth event. So that's it for my comic book review. Thank you again for watching. Remember to like and subscribe, hit the bell icon to stay notified, or just follow me on Twitter. Link is in the description below, because I always post new links to my new videos whenever they're fully uploaded on Twitter. So thanks again for watching. I'm Spider-Man 1991 saying see you later.